Good afternoon from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there this afternoon. My Valentine's gift to you is you get to see my beautiful face here. Once again, the bad news is that anytime you see my face, of course, that means we're talking about some kind of hazardous weather across the region. And we are looking at the potential for severe weather across the region tomorrow. You can see the graph of the radar behind me here. We do have a few scattered showers and thunderstorms out there this afternoon. None of this is on the severe side, thankfully. This is just kind of a standard garden variety showers and thunderstorms. This is actually associated with a warm front that we have moving across the area this afternoon. This will be ahead of a cold front that's going to be moving through our area tomorrow, and it is that cold front that is going to bring us the potential for severe weather, mainly during the afternoon into the evening. And yes, for some of us, especially across South Central Louisiana, this is going to go into the overnight hours into early Sunday morning. So somebody asked me earlier, why does this stuff always hit at night? Well, it's going to start in the middle of the afternoon, but it's going to continue into the late evening, possibly early Sunday morning for parts of South Central Louisiana. We'll talk about all the timing here in just a bit. As always, this is a live interactive briefing, so if you have any questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in our comment section, and we'll answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing. Some people are saying that it's skipping in and out and freezing up. I do apologize for that. That may be on our end. We've been having internet issues all afternoon, unfortunately, so it very well could be an issue on our end that's causing that. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do about it, so hopefully it'll work itself out for you. If not, this will be available as a recording, and hopefully it'll work a little bit better that way at that point. I'm going to go ahead and jump into our briefing here, and then if you do miss any of the stuff we talk about, these graphics will be available on our social media pages, so you can take a look at it that way. This is really blurry behind me, so I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen so you can get a much better look at it that way. So there we go. We are looking at, again, severe weather possible on tomorrow, mainly tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. We could have some showers and thunderstorms around during the morning hours, but as we get into the afternoon time frame, especially between about 1 and 3 o'clock, we're going to start to see a squall line develop and begin to move in parts of southeast Texas. And then as we get into the later afternoon, into the evenings, say between about 4 and 8, 9 o'clock, we're going to be looking at that squall line moving across southwest and central Louisiana. And then from about, say, 7 p.m.-ish to about midnight or a little after, we're going to be looking at about that squall line moving across parts of south central Louisiana. Now, ahead of the squall line itself, we are going to be looking at the possibility of some of those individual discrete cells, as we refer to them. Those could have the potential to become supercellular ahead of the squall line. So there is a low-end severe weather risk even ahead of the squall line. But I think at this point, the majority of our severe weather activity is going to be right along that squall line. Now, the good news is the squall line itself is not expected to be very wide. So we're not going to be looking at a long duration severe weather event. As the squall line moves through, especially right along the leading edge, that's where we usually see our severe weather. That's where we expect this severe weather to be. And that's only going to be maybe about over a 30-minute period. So while I'm going to be talking about a fairly large swath of time for potential severe weather, as we get closer in time and we get an idea of exactly what time that squall line is going to be moving through, that time frame for the potential for severe weather is going to narrow. So we're not looking at a all-day event for the severe weather. And then, of course, once the squall line moves through, then the severe weather threat will be over with at that point forward. You can see a large swath of the area in that yellow category there. That's the number 2 there. That's for our colorblind folks out there to kind of have an idea of what we're talking about. Let me see if I can get me out of the way here so you can actually see the legend. There we go. Of course, it's kind of hard to find me a place. I'll just float around up here for a little while. But essentially, that yellow area here, that number 2 area, that is a slight risk for most of the region. So that's a category 2 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center severe weather scale. You can see parts of northern Rapides and Avoyelles parishes in that orange. That number 3, that's a category 3 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center severe weather scale. So that's the higher overall risk, where we're expecting the potential for more in the way of damaging winds and tornadoes and even large hail. All 3 are going to be a possibility with this system as it moves through. You can see down further to the southwest over parts of, say, southern Jefferson County and points west of there in a lower overall risk. That green area, that's a marginal risk, which is a category 1 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center severe weather scale. So generally, the further north and east you go, the higher the overall risk is going to be. For our area, Alexandria is going to be looking at the highest overall risk, which is often the case. with the vast majority of the region in that slight risk area. As I mentioned, all forms of severe weather are going to be possible, so damaging winds I think are going to be the biggest overall threat. Tornadoes then would come in second, and large hail not out of the realm of possibility either. Large hail, of course, is quarter size or quarter or larger. So that's 1 inch in diameter. Again, as far as the timing, we're looking at probably early afternoon to get going across southeast Texas, mid-afternoon to early evening for southwest Louisiana, and then kind of late evening into the overnight hours for south central Louisiana. I have a graphic here that'll depict that in more detail here in just a moment. Let's talk specific probabilities, though. This is the greatest probability of seeing any kind of severe weather is going to be in the form of damaging winds. So we're looking at right now a 30 to 45 or 44% chance of seeing damaging winds, which is defined as 60-mile-an-hour winds or greater, within 25 miles of any location around or to the north of the Alexandria area. So northern Rapides, northern of Oils parishes, and points north, you're in that 30 to 44% chance of seeing damaging winds. So what that means, essentially, if you live in Alexandria, for example, you have a 30 to 44% chance of seeing 60-mile-an-hour or greater winds within 25 miles of Alexandria. That's not to say that you personally will experience it, but it's going to be nearby. It is possible that you could experience it personally, but that's a fairly high risk when you consider that on an average day, the chance of seeing 60-mile-an-hour winds are close to zero. A 30 to 45% chance is pretty high. Looking across the majority of the rest of the region, you're in that 15 to 29% chance, so we'll call it 15 to 30 just for a nice round number. And that's the vast majority of the area. Most of southeast Texas, pretty much all of southwest Louisiana, so that's Lake Charles, Lafayette, New Iberia, Morgan City, up towards Leesville, Beaumont, Port Arthur, Jasper, Newton, back towards Woodsville. All of the areas in between there, you are in that 15 to 30% chance of seeing those damaging winds. So effectively, a 1 in 3 chance of seeing damaging winds within 25 miles of any given location. So if you think about it, the amount of times that I come on the air and talk to you here, on average, 1 in 3 of those will result in damaging winds within 25 miles of you based on this current forecast. That's kind of another way of looking at it. Let's look at the probability of tornadoes. This risk has actually come down a little bit from yesterday and this morning. So we're looking at roughly about a 5 to 10% chance in that brown area. So essentially from Lake Charles up towards Alexandria, east towards Lafayette, New Iberia, those areas, you are looking at roughly about a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of those locations. So, for example, there's a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of Lake Charles. Same thing for Lafayette, New Iberia, Alexandria. The areas highlighted in green right along the immediate coastline, the overall risk is a little bit lower. So we're looking at over towards the Morgan City area, lower portions of Vermilion Parish, pretty much all of Cameron Parish, most of Jefferson, Hardin, Tyler, say southern Jasper and Newton counties, and pretty much all of Orange. You're in that lower overall risk, a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of those locations. You can see there's just a little glimmer of the yellow there up just to the north of our area, up north of the Alexandria area. That's a higher overall risk for tornadoes across parts of northern and northeastern Louisiana, as well as central and northern Mississippi. So the higher overall risk for tornadoes is going to be up further north that way, but we are not ruling out the possibility of a couple of tornadoes. And most likely, these are going to be embedded within that squall line right along the leading edge. We see that fairly commonly this time of year. This is our severe weather season. February, March, that's kind of when we have these cold fronts fighting with the warm air. That's when we tend to see these severe weather events and the potential for tornadoes within those squall lines across the area. And that's what we're going to be looking at here. Again, there is going to also be a possibility of some quarter size or larger hail. The overall risk is fairly low in comparison to the damaging wind threat, but we're still looking at about a 5 to 15% chance. This pretty much parallels the I-10 corridor and points north. So we're looking at a 5 to 15% chance of seeing quarter size or larger hail from Lafayette to Lake Charles to it's actually just north of the Beaumont area. And then up towards central Louisiana as well, and interior parts of southeast Texas. The overall risk for large hail closer to the coast, essentially south of I-10, is generally less than 5%. So the overall risk of large hail is pretty low right along the coastline there. So I think the highest overall threat is going to be those strong straight line winds. Then we're going to be looking at the risk of tornadoes kind of as the number 2 threat. And then large hail will be our third threat. Now, I don't expect us to have too much of a problem with as far as rainfall totals. I realize this is kind of messy because it's got a lot of ranges in there. But generally, most of the region is going to be looking at between about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of rainfall. A little bit higher across parts of central and south central Louisiana, between about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. But this activity is expected to be moving at a pretty good clip. So I don't think we're going to be looking at a whole lot in the way of a flash flood threat. The rainfall will be heavy, but it's not going to last for a long period of time. So anywhere between about, we'll call it between 1/4 inch to 1 inch of rain expected across the region. It's a good soaking, but it's not going to be enough to cause any significant flash flooding concerns. At least that's not what we're thinking at this point. This is a look at our timing graphics. This is going to give you a bit of an idea as to what to expect as far as timing. Now, keep in mind when we're looking at this, that this is not going to be, you're not going to be looking at severe weather during this whole time period. This is the time frame that we're expecting the squall line to move through. Again, the squall line is expected to be pretty narrow, so we're only going to be looking at actual severe weather for maybe 30, 45 minutes or so, maybe an hour if you're unlucky. But this is the time range that we're expecting that squall line to move through. And I realize it's a pretty large swath of time. This is based on probabilities, and this will kind of get narrowed down a little bit as we get closer to the actual event itself. But we're going to be looking at that squall line beginning to move through parts of southeast Texas, say Tyler County, northern parts of Hardin County, maybe northern parts of Jasper County, between about 3 and 8 p.m. for that to move completely through. It should be done with by 8 o'clock. At least that's the thinking right now. For the rest of southeast Texas, Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, up towards Jasper, Newton, we're looking at between about 4 and 10 p.m. And again, we're not looking at severe weather that entire time. There probably will be a watch in effect for that entire time, but we're not going to be looking at the squall line lasting that long. The squall line's only going to last probably 30, 45 minutes or so. But at some point between 4 and 10 p.m. is the time frame we're looking at for that. So if you have plans in the morning, shouldn't be too much of a problem. You should be able to get it out. You may be dodging some showers or thunderstorms, but they're not going to be severe in the morning. This is going to be more late afternoon into the evening. You can see as it gets into western Louisiana, we're looking at between about 5 p.m. and midnight in that dark green color there. So that's going to cover Cameron, Lake Charles, up towards DeRidder, Alexandria, Oakdale. That's the time frame we're looking at between about 5 p.m. and midnight for that squall line to move through. And if I had to put some money on it right now, I'd say it might be a little bit earlier in that time frame, so maybe probably closer to 5 to 8-ish p.m. But it may be as late as midnight before all of the storm activity actually gets out of here. Over further to the east towards the Lafayette, Opelousas, Ville Platte, up towards Bunkie, Barksville, those areas you're looking at between about 6 p.m. and 1 a.m. Here, I'm going to go bounce around again and get out of your way so you can actually see. So again, between about 6 p.m. and 1 a.m. for the squall line to actually move through those areas, and that does include the Lafayette area. Then portions of Lower Acadiana, say St. Martin, Iberia, St. Mary parishes, you're looking at between about 7 p.m. and 3 a.m. for that squall line to move through at that point. Again, it's not going to last that entire period. It's actually only going to last probably 30, 45 minutes-ish. Sometime within there, but that's kind of the time frame we're looking at. So if you have activities planned, I know it's Saturday, it's Valentine's weekend, so I don't want to completely, here's a good spot for me right there for a moment. I don't want to completely say, don't do anything outdoors during the day. So if you have morning activities, I think you're probably going to be okay. You may be dodging a few showers and thunderstorms, but from a severe perspective, you're going to be okay. As we get into kind of the mid-afternoon onward, that's when conditions are going to deteriorate from a severe perspective, and we're going to need to be on high alert for those severe thunderstorm warnings that are likely to be coming. Don't be surprised at all if we get either a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch out sometime tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening, and with regards kind of in that time frame. This kind of gives you a little bit better idea in terms of more specific timing. Let me get my dumb face out of the way here. We're starting looking at, these are our Louisiana cities. I'll show the southeast Texas ones here in just a second, but generally looking at increasing rain chances from about noon onward. You can see between about noon and midnight, that's when our highest overall rain chances are going to be. And that squall line is going to be moving through within that. You can see even as we go through the morning, as I said, we're looking at about a 20 to 30, maybe 40% chance of rain kind of through Saturday morning. but that is not expected to be severe at this point. As we get into the overnight period after midnight, you can see that severe threat does kind of continue for parts of lower Acadiana, so Morgan City over towards east of Lafayette, Lake Arthur area. You're still looking at a 40 to 70% chance of rain at that point. So we're still looking at potential severe weather going into the late night, Saturday night into Sunday morning for parts of lower Acadiana, south central Louisiana, and those areas. Taking a look at our southeast Texas cities, you can see kind of the same time frame. The showers and thunderstorms are going to start a little bit earlier in the morning over into southeast Texas, because obviously with the frontal boundary approaching from the west, you're a little bit closer to it in the morning. So you can see we've got higher overall precipitation probabilities for the morning time frame, but we're still not expecting that to become severe until sometime during the afternoon. These are going to be more general showers and thunderstorms during the morning, and then becoming more severe from about noontime onward through the late evening. Finally, taking a look here at the 7-day forecast. Again, this is a cold front that's going to be rolling through the area, so it's going to be warm tomorrow ahead of that boundary, but then cooling off pretty significantly Saturday night into Sunday morning behind it. You can see we're actually looking at the possibility of a light freeze, in fact, for Sunday night going into Monday morning across the area. This is going to be the first freeze we've had in a few weeks, probably since the snow event and the extreme cold that came with that, that we'll be looking at another freeze across the area. Now, this isn't going to be anywhere on the order of that, but we will touch freezing for maybe a couple of hours across central Louisiana. This is not expected to be pipe busting weather, so running pipes shouldn't be a concern. I don't think we're not going to be that cold for this event. As we get into the middle and latter parts of next week, you can see we are looking at another front rolling through, where we're going to be looking at temperatures back down into the mid-20s. That may require some pipe preparations, but that's still 5-6 days away, so we got some time to take a look at that at that point. Bottom line, though, is we take a look at this the graphic here going through the next week. We are going to be looking at some cooler temperatures. It's going to feel a little bit more like winter out there instead of late spring for a change. When we were breaking all kinds of record highs last week with those temperatures in the lower 80s across a large part of the area. So this is going to get us back down to at, or actually a little bit below, where our normals are supposed to be for this time of year after we get this frontal boundary through the area here tomorrow evening into tomorrow night. So that's what we have here this afternoon for you from the National Weather Service. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. I'm going to go ahead and throw the timing graphic back up there. Let me see if I can come back. That still doesn't look great. I look great, of course, but the graphic doesn't look great, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that back up there. If you do have a question, feel free to throw it in the comment section here. I'm going to scroll back here. We got a cozy group here this afternoon. We only got 300 people watching. That's not a whole lot. I guess it's Friday afternoon. Everybody wants to go home. It's Valentine's Day. Nobody wants to hang out with me. I don't blame you. Let's see. Lorelei says, "Is this a new Tetris game, Donald?" Yeah, it can take me and bounce me all over the place. Whee! And play the game of will I hit the corner? Whee! All right, there we go. Enough of that. Velma says, "Today is Friday." Yes, today is Friday. That's a question I can answer with a high degree of certainty. Today is indeed Friday, and tomorrow is Saturday. Wanda asks, any chances of snow in the 7-day? No, we're not expecting any. There's no real significant opportunities for snow. Don't get the impression that because we had a record-breaking snow event that this is going to become something normal around here. No, I don't anticipate that. But no, there's no real appreciable chance of any kind of winter precip here in the forecast right now. Madison asks, is this going to be worse than what we saw Tuesday? It's going to depend where you are. I think in general, yeah, the overall risk of severe weather is higher than what we saw on Tuesday. But exactly what you're going to experience is going to vary, obviously, depending on exactly where you are. But yes, the overall risk for severe weather is higher than what we had on Tuesday. Rod asks, when is spring coming? Spring officially arrives on the calendar. I believe it's, March 21st? It's either the 20th or the 21st. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we got some time still for the calendar spring. For the meteorological spring, that officially starts in March on March 1st And for what it actually is out there, it started last week because we've been very warm the last week or so. We're gonna go back to second winter here in a little while though. Naraya asks, is it going to be a lot like what we saw at the end of December, tornado-wise? That one, we had a lot of tornadoes with that event. I think you were talking about the one a couple of days after Christmas. I don't expect the overall risk to be quite that high. You know, I do think we are going to see a couple of tornadoes out of this, but I'm not expecting the kind of long, very long duration, extreme tornado that we saw. We had the EF3 that moved through parts of Jefferson County and into Cameron Parish. I don't expect that order of a tornado with this event. Joanne says, Happy Valentine's. Happy Valentine's Day, Joanne. Natalie says, will this storm bring our income taxes in early? Because like we broke and I want a king cake. No, unfortunately, I cannot speak to the effect of storm systems on income taxes. If anything, I think that would probably slow that process down. But I don't think there's a whole lot of income taxes being filed or being processed in this part of the world. So I don't think that's going to be a concern one way or the other for us. As far as the king cake goes, I actually brought a king cake here into our office this morning. I made some last night. It's quite delicious. You can try making one yourself. They're a whole lot cheaper than buying them in the grocery. And a lot better, too, at least in my opinion. Catherine says, I missed this. How severe are we talking? We're talking severe. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. In terms of how severe, let me go ahead and see if I can pull my graphic back up here. So essentially, we're looking at a slight risk across the vast majority of the region. So a slight risk means essentially some areas are going to see damaging straight line winds. 1 or 2 tornadoes is generally what we say when we're talking about a slight risk, although, you know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to see 3 or so. The higher overall risk is going to be across central Louisiana. That's the areas highlighted in orange there. That's an enhanced risk. That's a category 3 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center scale. Generally, in those areas, we see more in the way of tornadoes and damaging winds. So we're talking about several tornadoes and or damaging winds. But you can see that area is generally central Louisiana and further north into northeast Louisiana and parts of central and northern Mississippi. As far as what kinds of severe weather, we're going to be looking at all forms of severe weather. So we're looking at the possibility of some damaging winds. You can see the majority of the region in that 15 to 30% chance of seeing damaging winds. The areas across central Louisiana a little bit higher, 30 to 45% chance. For tornadoes, we're looking at about a 5 to 10% chance away from the coastline. That's those areas highlighted in brown, so Lake Charles, Lafayette, New Iberia, up towards Alexandria. A little bit lower overall risk across southeast Texas for tornadoes, 2 to 4% chance. Same thing right along the immediate coastline, about a 2 to 4% chance. And then for the probability of large hail, we're looking at a 5 to 15% chance, essentially north of I-10. South of I-10, we're looking at less than a 5% chance. So all in all, the highest overall risk is going to be for damaging winds, not ruling out the possibility of at least a couple of tornadoes, and a few spots may see some quarter-size or larger hail, but I think that risk is fairly low for most of the region. Amber's asking, what can we expect in the time frame? Again, you know, like we just discussed, we're looking at the possibility of a couple of tornadoes across the region. I can't say specifically whether that's going to be in or around the orange area or exactly what kind of severe weather you're going to experience, other than it is a possibility. As far as timing goes, you're probably going to be looking at sometime between about 4 and 6 p.m. With the activity generally coming to an end no later than 10. I think it'll probably be over a little bit before that for the orange area. But the squall line itself is going to be where the extreme majority of any kind of severe weather is going to be. I'm not ruling out a couple of cells out in front of the squall line that could produce some severe weather, but I think the majority of the severe weather is going to be right within the squall line, which is not going to last very long. We're talking, again, only about 30, 45 minutes or thereabouts. And then once that squall line gets past you, you're in the clear after that. So that's not going to be something you're going to be dealing with all night. There's going to probably be about a 1 hour period at some point where you're going to need to hunker down and kind of find some shelter, get out of the way and really pay attention to what's going on. But after that, you'll be in the clear after that. After that, you'll be in the clear after that. That was redundant. Shut up, Donald. You talk too much. Chelsea says, I see Saturday afternoon, but if there a specific time, it is covered. What is the time? Well, again, it depends on where you are, but this graphic here kind of gives you an idea of what, in terms of the range of time frame we're looking at. So 4 to 10 p.m. for the vast majority of southeast Texas. 5 p.m. and midnight is when we're expecting that squall line to move through, say, southwest Louisiana. Between about 6 p.m. and 1 a.m. over towards the Lafayette area, Opelousas, up towards Ville Platte, Bunkie, and then between about 7 p.m. and 3 a.m. for south central Louisiana, kind of lower Acadiana area, so St. Mary, Iberia, St. Martin parishes, those areas. And again, but we're not looking at severe weather across that entire time frame. This is just the time frame within which the squall line will pass through you. Natalie, can we send the hail to our ex's house? Like a little belated Valentine's gift. Yeah, I'm all in favor of that. Just send me their address and I'll make sure that I'll put it in the weather machine and we'll get some hail over your ex's house. No, I can't do that. That would be probably lawsuit worthy if I was capable of doing that. No, I unfortunately, as much as I hate your ex as much as the next guy, but I don't think that's a good idea. Lorna asks, next week's freeze that is coming, is this going to bring on more of this severe weather? I haven't actually looked at that next boundary. Let me take a quick look here just to give you an idea. I've been so focused on this one today that I didn't actually look out too far into the future. Right now it looks like if there is going to be any probability, it's extremely low. So I'm not saying that we couldn't see one or two severe storms at this point, but there's not a very good signal for the potential for severe weather with the next cold front next week. So yeah, probably a few showers and thunderstorms, but not looking at a big severe threat, at least not at this point. All right, I've reached the bottom of my questions list here. So if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in there. I've got a few more minutes to hang out with you fine folks before I got to move on to get the rest of my forecast done. And again, as far as the precipitation goes, we are not looking at a whole lot in the way of rainfall totals. There it is. So generally, we're looking at between about a 1/10 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch across southeast Texas. I think we're going to be looking at a little bit higher overall totals across southwest Louisiana and central Louisiana. So looking at between about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. And then over towards the Lafayette area, maybe between a 1/2 inch to an inch. The higher numbers are going to be because that squall line is going to be pretty well developed by the time it gets over that way, and also maybe moving a little bit slower. But even so, this is probably not going to be enough to cause any kind of a flash flood threat. So there is going to be a severe weather threat, but I don't foresee much in the way of a flash flood threat with this system. Keith says, happy Valentine's Day, all. Happy Valentine's Day, Keith. Hope you're having a wonderful one. Darlene wants to know what the temperatures will be. Behind this frontal boundary, we're going to be looking at temperatures cooling off to near freezing. I'm going to turn your question off so we can actually see the lows there. But by tomorrow night, behind the front, you can see temperatures will be dropping down into the upper 30s, probably across southeast Texas. The reason there's such a big difference, the 38 to 54 there, is because the front will have not actually made it through parts of the area by the time the lowest temperatures would be reached. So you can see as we go through the day, Sunday, we're going to be looking at temperatures generally in the 50s, maybe some lower 60s. And then by Sunday night, you can see we're dropping back down. We are expecting a light freeze across parts of central Louisiana. I think we're going to probably stay above freezing along the I-10 corridor. So Lake Charles, Lafayette, we're going to be above freezing, but we are going to be in the 30s. So it is going to be chilly. And then as we get into, say, Monday night, we're looking at, again, back into the 30s to lower 40s. Then we're actually going to have another cold front come through. It looks like Tuesday into Wednesday. You can see Wednesday night's temperatures back down into the mid-20s across parts of central Louisiana. That's going to be at least a light freeze along the I-10 corridor, maybe all the way to the coastline. And at 25, we're going to be talking about the potential for some threats to pipes across central Louisiana. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on with that. Natalie says, do you think the cold weather will stick around for a bit after next week? Climatologically, yeah. I mean, we should still be looking at least a few more pretty good, decent cold fronts that are going to keep us in the 30s. We're getting close to our normal date of last freeze, which I think is like the 3rd-ish week of February. So I wouldn't, beyond this one, I can't promise we're going to have another freeze beyond next week. But yeah, we usually do get a few more late season, for us anyway, cold fronts that'll drop us back into the 30s. So I don't think winter's quite done with us yet. Naraya asks, what are the predicted wind speeds for the Lafayette area? If you're talking about the wind speeds outside of the severe storms, we're going to be looking at some gusty winds out there. It is going to get breezy ahead of the boundary before the cold front actually moves through. So we're going to be looking at wind gusts 25, maybe 30 miles an hour ahead of the frontal boundary itself. Now, if you're talking about the potential wind speeds within the cold front or within the potential severe storms with that squall line, we could be looking at winds greater than 60 miles an hour. But even beyond outside of that, though, we're still going to be looking at gusts of 30 plus miles an hour across the area. And that's not just going to be in the Lafayette area. That's going to be across the whole region tomorrow. It is going to be breezy out there tomorrow. Brianne says, can I get that king cake recipe? Sure. Let me see here. I'm going to come back here. See my email right there? Send me an email. I'll happily send it to you. Email's on the bottom right hand of your screen. King cake for everybody. Lauren asked, about what time tomorrow will you have a closer time to the squall line coming through? We need to actually wait for the squall line to actually begin to organize so we can see how fast it's actually moving. Once that happens, we can usually narrow it down to within just about an hour or two. But we actually have to have the squall line begin to develop. It's not actually there yet. But once the squall line actually develops, so I think that'll be probably by about mid-morning-ish tomorrow, we'll have a better idea with regards to, we'll be able to narrow that squall line down to within just a couple of hours or so. All right, not seeing any more questions here, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the time being. If you have a question that I missed for some reason, or you're viewing this as a recording, or you think of a question once you get off of our briefing here, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. I'll be happy to answer your questions that way. As we already just talked about, my email is on the screen there in the bottom right-hand corner. It's donald.jones@noaa.gov. You can email me. I'll be happy to answer your question that way. You can also give us a call. Phone number is also on your screen there in the bottom right. Area code 337-477-5285. We have forecasters here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So even if I'm not here, you can give that phone number a ring and be happy to answer any questions you have that way as well. We're also on X. You can send us a message there. We're also on Instagram. You can send us a message on there. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you do have any lingering, burning questions. We will have an update again for you tomorrow. I'm not sure if we're going to do another one of these lives just due to the scheduling, but if we do, I'll definitely have that posted, the timing for you before we do that. Otherwise, we will have updated graphics for you, including the latest timing of that squall line by tomorrow morning here on Facebook, on X, which we're also broadcasting on. We don't put graphics on YouTube, so I can't help you with that. You're going to have to go to one of our social media pages for that, but also on Instagram as well. In the meantime, everyone have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Make sure to stay weather aware as we go through the day tomorrow, especially during the afternoon and evening for this potential severe weather across the area. Then some cooler weather as we head into early next week. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day, one and all. Mwah. I love every one of you, and we'll talk to you again maybe tomorrow. Farewell.